Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we're exploring the wisdom of Saadi of Shiraz.
Oh, Saadi, love him.
Right. So this is episode 14 of our journey through Marifat.
Those conversations with Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani.
Exactly. And just a reminder, what we're working with here are translations.
So, there might be a few things lost in translation, but...
We're going to do our best to bring you the heart of it all, rather.
Absolutely.
So today we're tackling some pretty mind-bending concepts.
Yeah. Saadi doesn't mess around. He goes deep.
The nature of reality, the limits of logic, all that good stuff.
And what's so fascinating about Saadi is that he, embraces those big questions,
He does. He really challenges us to kind of go beyond our everyday understanding of how things work.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that really struck me was this poem where he says,
Well, which one?
"The path of reason is nothing but twists and turns. For the mystic, there's nothing but God."
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
It's like he's suggesting that logic can only take us so far.
Well, that's a really great point. And Dr. Dinani actually talks about that. This idea that logic has its limitations.
Okay, so he's not totally dismissing logic.
No, not at all. He's saying it's a tool, but it can't capture everything.
Oh, I see. It's like,
It's like logic is a map, helpful for getting around, but...
But it's not the actual territory.
Exactly. And Dr. Dinani, he uses this analogy of a fly trapped in a bottle.
A fly in a bottle?
Yeah, to show how we can get, stuck in our own thinking, the
Yeah.
bottle of our perceptions.
Okay, I get that. But if logic isn't enough, then how do we, break free from the bottle? How do we even expand our understanding?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Dr. Dinani suggests we need to think more, but in a different way.
More thinking.
Yeah.
But I thought we were saying logic wasn't enough.
Yeah, but it's not about abandoning logic. It's about, using it to push past its own boundaries.
Okay, now you're really making me think.
Question our assumptions. Be open to new ways of seeing things.
And he says mystics can offer us a glimpse into what lies beyond those boundaries.
People who have had those deeper experiences with the divine.
Right. So it's not about ditching logic, but transcending it.
Exactly. Going beyond the limits of our rational minds to experience a bigger reality.
That's a pretty powerful concept.
And Saadi himself, as a Sufi master, he embodies that way of seeing the world. He wasn't just a poet or a philosopher.
Right. He was a mystic, too. He had those direct experiences.
Exactly.
Which reminds me of this other mind-blowing idea that Dr. Dinani brings up.
Yeah.
That saying by Imam Ali, "I never saw a thing without seeing God before it, with it, and after it."
Whoa.
Right.
It's a big one.
I mean, what does that even mean?
Well, if we break it down, it's about a fundamental shift in perspective. Imagine not just seeing the world, but seeing the divine in everything.
Okay, but how do you even start to do that?
Well, Dr. Dinani uses this analogy of a mirror.
A mirror. Okay.
Think of the world as the reflection.
Right. The image we see in the mirror.
And the divine is like the quicksilver behind it.
The backing that allows the reflection to exist.
Right. In other words, the world is like a manifestation of the divine, inseparable from it.
So everything we experience, it's all infused with the divine.
Exactly. And that leads to a really interesting question.
Which is?
If God is in everything, does that mean there's no everything but only God?
Whoa, that's deep.
Yeah.
So there is no separation.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
Dr. Dinani uses this analogy of a pitcher made of ice. What happens when the ice melts?
It becomes one with the water. The pitcher disappears.
Exactly. Mystics see creation as a manifestation of the divine, ultimately inseparable.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
It's challenging, but also,
Liberating.
yeah, liberating, because it opens up so many possibilities.
It's like Saadi is offering us a glimpse into a world where everything's connected, and the divine is woven into, everything.
And that brings us to another concept that comes up a lot in these conversations.
Yeah.
The idea of man.
Man. Isn't that,
I know. The word might sound a bit outdated, but stick with me.
Okay, I'm listening. What's so important about this concept?
Well, Dr. Dinani explains that man isn't just about our physical bodies. It's about, the essence of our being.
Something deeper than even our souls.
Yeah. And he uses the term to encompass the whole spectrum of human potential, from the worst of us
To the best.
Exactly. He points to figures like Pharaoh, representing, tyranny and oppression.
And at the other end of the spectrum, figures like Prophet Muhammad.
Symbolizing, spiritual perfection, compassion. So man, in Saadi's view, it becomes this vast concept holding all these contradictions.
I'm starting to see how this ties into everything we've been talking about. If we can see the divine in everything, then we can also see the potential for darkness and light within ourselves.
Exactly. And that's what makes Saadi so powerful. He's not just giving us these abstract ideas, he's giving us a way to understand ourselves.
And our place in the world.
He shows us that we all have the capacity for both tremendous good and tremendous harm, that our choices, our words, our actions all have consequences.
It's like he's saying we have a responsibility to, like, cultivate the divine within us.
To become the best versions of man that we can be.
This is already so much to take in, but I'm so intrigued by these ideas.
Me too. It's such a fascinating exploration, and there's still so much more to uncover.
I'm ready for it.
It's like by embodying the prophet's qualities, kindness, generosity, compassion, it naturally extends to all of creation, not just people.
So we're not just talking about like human-centered ethics. It's bigger than that.
Right. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything. And Dr. Dinani points out that Saadi uses storytelling to really bring this complex idea to life.
Makes sense. Stories can bypass our intellectual defenses and touch us on a deeper level.
Exactly. He weaves these profound concepts into narratives that, like, resonate on a deeper level, you know? They make you feel the truth of his ideas, not just think about them.
So it's experiential, not just theoretical.
Exactly. And another technique he uses is to ground these big ideas in everyday experiences. So instead of talking about some grand philosophical theory,
He might tell a story about regular people facing real-life moral dilemmas.
precisely, or use vivid imagery from nature to illustrate a point about, say, the nature of the divine.
Oh, I love that. It makes these concepts so much more accessible and relatable.
Right. It's not about being a scholar or a mystic to grasp Saadi's wisdom. It's about paying attention to the world around us, noticing those everyday moments, the rhythms of nature.
And maybe even considering the impact of our own words and actions. Are those all ways to kind of tap into what he's talking about?
Absolutely. And Saadi encourages us to look for those moments of connection, you know, those little glimpses of the divine that spark our sense of wonder and gratitude, finding the extraordinary within the ordinary.
That's something we could all use a little more of, especially in today's world. It feels like everything's so busy and chaotic, you know? It's easy to get swept up in it all and forget to appreciate the simple things, to be present in the moment.
Saadi is urging us to slow down, to savor those moments. And Dr. Larijani even points out that Saadi describes the act of breathing as a spiritual practice.
Oh, that's right. Inhaling the good, exhaling the negative. It's such a simple act, but it can be so profound.
Right. Turning something we do all the time without even thinking about it into this conscious connection with the divine.
I think that's what makes his wisdom so relevant today. In this world of information overload and constant distractions, he's offering us a way to reconnect with ourselves, with each other, and with that divine presence that permeates everything.
And Dr. Dinani emphasizes that this reconnection often begins with gratitude. Just taking a moment each day to appreciate what we have, the air we breathe, the food we eat, our loved ones, it can really shift our perspective.
It's like shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance. And from that place of gratitude, we can start to see the interconnectedness of everything so much more clearly. Speaking of interconnectedness, that brings us to another aspect of Saadi's work that I find so fascinating, his emphasis on language.
Right, it's not just about communication, it's about how language reflects our inner world and how it actually shapes our reality.
It's almost like the words we use become our reality, both internally and externally.
That's exactly what Dr. Larijani points out. He says it's like language is this programming code that shapes our perception of reality. So if we're constantly using language that's negative, judgmental, or divisive, we're essentially programming ourselves for unhappiness, conflict, and separation.
It's not just what we say to others, it's the internal dialogue we have with ourselves too, right?
Absolutely. But the good news is we have the power to choose our words more consciously. We can use language that's positive, compassionate, and unifying, and start to create a different kind of internal landscape, one that's more conducive to peace, joy, and genuine connection.
It's about speaking from the heart, not from a place of fear or judgment.
And Dr. Dinani highlights how important this is when it comes to how we talk about nature. If we see the natural world as just resources to be exploited, that reinforces this mindset of separation and domination, you know?
But if we could start using language that acknowledges our interconnectedness with nature, that recognizes the intelligence and inherent beauty of all living things, maybe that can help us shift from a mindset of exploitation to a mindset of respect, gratitude, and responsibility.
I think that's at the very core of Saadi's message. He reminds us that we're not separate from nature, we're a part of it. Our actions have consequences, not just for us, but for the whole web of life.
That reminds me of how Saadi often uses the imagery of weaving and tapestry in his work. Dr. Dinani talks about this. It's like he's reminding us that we're all threads in this intricate, interconnected fabric. The choices we make, the words we speak, the actions we take, they all contribute to the overall pattern.
Such a powerful image. And it ties back to that concept of man that we were talking about earlier. It's not just a philosophical concept for Saadi, it's a call to action.
Right. He's inviting us to embody his wisdom, to become the best versions of ourselves, to make choices that contribute to a more just and compassionate world.
Exactly. He's challenging us to become the kind of man who embodies compassion, generosity, wisdom, and reverence for all creation.
It feels like he's saying that our choices really matter, that we each have the power to shape not only our own destiny, but the destiny of the world around us. It's a heavy responsibility, but also incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And I think that's why Saadi's work continues to resonate centuries later. It's not just a collection of beliefs or abstract concepts, it's a roadmap for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life. A life that's aligned with the deepest truths of our being and the interconnectedness of all things.
It's like he's inviting us to step into our full potential, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings.
Definitely a vision worth striving for. But it's important to remember that Saadi doesn't just offer these grand ideals. He also gives practical advice on how to navigate the day-to-day challenges we all face.
Like his teachings on patience, perseverance, and resilience when we encounter adversity. He reminds us that life is full of ups and downs, but that our attitude toward those challenges can make all the difference.
And he does this, as always, through his captivating stories and vivid imagery. Like that story Dr. Larijani shares about the Sufi master who loses everything.
Oh, yes. His home, possessions, even his family. And yet his response to each misfortune is simply, thank God. That's such a powerful example of finding gratitude in the midst of suffering.
It really is. It speaks to Saadi's belief that even our most difficult experiences can be opportunities for growth and transformation.
It's like he's saying that instead of resisting or getting angry about the inevitable challenges of life, we can choose to see them as lessons, as stepping stones on our spiritual journey.
And accepting the divine will doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned to your fate. It's about recognizing that there's a wisdom at play that we can't always grasp with our limited human understanding. It's about trusting the process, knowing that even when things feel dark, there's a light guiding us toward a higher purpose.
This reminds me of another key theme in Saadi's work, seeking guidance from those who have traveled further along the spiritual path. He often talks about the role of teachers, mentors, and guides in helping us navigate the complexities of life and realize our full potential.
And that's where the concept of companionship is so important in his teachings. Surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us, challenge us, and support us on our spiritual journey is crucial for growth.
You can't do it alone, right? We need the wisdom of those who've come before us and the encouragement of our fellow travelers.
Precisely. And Dr. Dinani points out that this companionship goes beyond just our human connections. Saadi also encourages us to find companionship in nature.
So trees, rivers, mountains, the stars, they can all be our teachers if we're open to their lessons. It's about expanding our sense of community to encompass all creation.
Yes. And Dr. Dinani explains that connecting with nature reminds us of our interconnectedness, our place in the grand scheme of things, and the cyclical nature of life. It's tapping into a wellspring of wisdom and solace that's often missing in our human-centered world.
It's like taking a deep breath of fresh air for our spirits. A reminder that there's more to life than just the constant striving and achieving that we often get caught up in. There's that deeper dimension, that connection to something greater than ourselves, just waiting to be discovered.
And Saadi, through his beautiful poetry, captivating stories, and profound wisdom, shows us how to find it. He invites us on this journey of self-discovery to wake up to our true potential and to create a more just, compassionate, and beautiful world.
It's definitely a challenging journey, but the rewards, as he reminds us, are immeasurable.
Absolutely. And as we continue exploring Marifat, we'll uncover even more of Saadi's incredible insights.
I can't wait. But for now, I think it's time to turn our attention to another fascinating aspect of Saadi's work, his emphasis on silence.
Oh yes, Dr. Larijani talks about this a lot. Saadi believed that sometimes the most profound understanding doesn't come from words at all, but from stillness.
It's about quieting the mind and opening ourselves up to a deeper level of perception,
Yeah.
like going beyond the limits of language and tapping into a kind of intuitive knowing that goes beyond the rational mind.
Exactly. And Dr. Larijani suggests that in that space of silence, we might discover a whole new way of seeing the world, a way of being rooted in wonder, gratitude, and interconnectedness. Yeah, it's like stepping outside of our usual way of thinking and being, into a space where we can be more receptive to the subtle wisdom that nature has to offer.
And maybe in that stillness, we can start to see the world through Saadi's eyes, a world where everything is connected, where the divine is woven into the fabric of existence. It's a beautiful vision.
It is, and it's a vision that challenges us to become more conscious, more compassionate, more connected in our own lives.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Saadi's world, I'm struck by how relevant his teachings are, even centuries later. He speaks to something deep within us, something that yearns for meaning, connection, and a sense of belonging.
He reminds us that true happiness and fulfillment don't come from material things, but from cultivating inner peace, connecting with something larger than ourselves, and living in harmony with the natural world. It's not always an easy path, but it's a path worth taking.
And Saadi reminds us to approach it with a sense of curiosity, a willingness to learn and grow, and maybe even a little bit of humor along the way. Because life, with all its complexities and challenges, is also an incredible gift.
Absolutely. And as we continue our journey through Marifat, we'll keep exploring these ideas and discover even more about how Saadi's wisdom can guide us.
But for now, we want to leave you with this question. How can you bring Saadi's teachings into your own life? How can you cultivate more gratitude, reverence, and interconnectedness in your own unique way?
Take some time to reflect on that. And until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep the wisdom of Saadi alive in your heart.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.